the Atlas Post. The PPP long-awaited update has finally passed and is now law. The Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020 makes several critical changes to the Paycheck Protection Program, which everybody's been kind of anxious because that deadline was June 30th, which is coming up really, really soon. So the PPP program was created under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which we typically refer to as the CARES Act. And the changes provide relief to many businesses currently using the PPP loan proceeds, preparing to seek loan forgiveness within the requirements of the CARES Act. So today we're going to go over some of the main key points, but we're also going to give you some insight as to things that you may not find in other places. First, and probably the most important news for borrowers, is that they have more time to spend the loan proceeds. That date, June 30th, which was quickly approaching, was the date in which the covered period, 8 weeks of the receipt of the loan proceeds, where you had the pressure that you had to use the funds, specifically on forgivable expenditures like paying, salaries. Now, here's the key point. Now borrowers have 24 weeks after the origination of the loan, or December 31st, 2020, whichever is earlier. That's one of the main key points. So this was one of the key points, which was the payroll tax, and the payroll cost was supposed to be 75% of the loan, which means they had to spend 75% of the loan proceeds on payroll costs. That amount has been reduced to 60% of the loan proceeds on payroll. That means that's huge. That means that forgivable non-payroll expenses can be as high as 40% now, which was previously 25%. So let's go over the numbers real quick, which is the loan proceeds, which was previously 75% payroll, 25% non-payroll, has now been changed. Now it's 60% payroll and 40% regular spending, which could be your rent. It could be, any of the costs to go ahead and reopen or whatever you needed for the business. So a part of it is what qualifies as a forgivable expense has not changed. I also wanted to add this portion because in the information, when they talk about the percentages, such as 60% of the loan proceeds must be spent on payroll costs and 40% could be spent on something else, those numbers are really important because the changes according to this is from the National Law Review, appears to create a cliff. To receive loan forgiveness, a borrower shall use 60% of the loan amount for payroll costs. This appears to mean that no amount will be forgiven if the borrower doesn't use 60% of the loan proceeds for payroll costs. So I want to make certain you get that correct. So if you don't use it for 60%, then you don't get the loan forgiven, according to this. And I think I'll go with this. I mean, you could read the law, check with your accountant, make certain they read all of these things, but this is from the National Law Review. So if a borrower received its loan prior to enactment of the PPP Flexibility Act, it may elect to use the original 8-week period beginning on the date of the loan to determine forgiveness. However, if a borrower makes this election, it is not clear if the other changes under the PPP Flexibility Act must be applied, including the 60% requirement discussed above. So these are clearly things that you will need to confirm and check out depending on how you want to do it. Also, another key part to note is the loan terms, and the repayment period amount has been lengthened. The PPPFA, or we'll just say the updated PPP or the Flexibility Act, gives borrowers whose loans are not forgiven more time. So before you had 5 years, okay, before they have a minimum maturity of 5 years, instead of 2 years to repay the loan. The interest rate of 1% was not changed. Now, it is important to note that this change to the PPP does not apply to existing loans, but lenders and borrowers may mutually agree to amend these loans to conform to the new 5-year term. And previously, payments were deferred for a period of 6 months from the date of the loan. This extends the deferral period. The PPP Flexibility Act extends the deferral period to the date the lender receives the forgiven amount from SBA. If a borrower does not apply for loan forgiveness within 10 months following the end of the covered period, the deferral period will end on the date that is 10 months after the last date of the covered period. Additionally, this is one of the things that I think is really important, which is the FTE wage reduction safe harbors. And what it does is it modifies or adds some things in the PPP Flexibility Act. Namely, and this is really important, because remember they talked about that head count that you're supposed to match from pre-COVID levels? Well, it adds a new safe harbor to address borrowers' inability to rehire employees or resume pre-pandemic business activity. So, if you are able to document an inability to rehire individuals who were employees on February 15th, 2020, and an inability to hire similarly qualified employees for unfulfilled positions on or before December 31st. So they do give you a little bit of leniency, which actually is really good. So the borrower is able to document an inability to return to the same level of business activity as it was operating at before February 15th, 2020, due to compliance with requirements established or guidance issued by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration during the period on March 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, related to the maintenance of standards for sanitation, social distancing, or any other worker or customer safety requirement related to the 2019 COVID or coronavirus. So, for example, if you're a restaurant and you cannot hire back all of the employees because, well, you don't have as many customers because you have to spread out the tables, or say you're a school and you can't have all the kids at the school at the same time, and so maybe you don't need as many teachers, or you know what I mean, whatever types of changes that may occur. So they do give you a little bit of leniency for that. So there are so many different changes. The great part about the PPP Flexibility Act is it does incorporate changes to really help people carry this through. And I know that it addresses a lot of the concerns that many people had regarding the PPP loans. There are a few questions regarding the PPP Flexibility Act that still remain. For example, the SBA has not further clarified the necessity of certification and how it will go about auditing the thousands of loans above $2 million. And they do expect to issue additional guidance in the form of frequently asked questions and interim final rules to implement it. So these you will find, of course, they should be on the SBA website when you go ahead and look at the provisions of the PPP Flexibility Act. So there you go. We do research and we look this information up and we double cross-check and we do try and get really good resources so we give you accurate information, because we know that this is going to help you. And yes, you still do need to talk to your accountant and your attorneys when appropriate, but please do. We do try our best to go ahead and do the research for you and help you with that. But please leave your comments, as we would love to hear from you how this is helping you. Also note some comments, because some of the things that you put out there, I mean, yes, you can contact your congressman, but sometimes they are looking at social media and seeing what's out there. So your responses do make a difference, and they may also help somebody else too. And if this has been helpful, we would appreciate, there you go. There's the bell, a thumbs up. Yes, check out our playlist and subscribe for the latest updates. And there you have another thing. This is the Atlas Post. Have a joyful day. Oh, and one other thing, to help us support the channel, please, we do have the referral down below for Patreon, and we would just love it if you show your appreciation. Thank you. Have a great day.